Get some alternative voices and to hear a bit of a word of testimony to encourage and stimulate us here. And we're delighted to welcome Clayton Bjelan here to join us. Now, if you'd like to submit a question, my phone number is in the newsletter. But if you'd like to just send a question, you're very welcome to send a text asking a question during the message if you like. But that's completely up to you. Grab a seat, Clayton. I'm just going to, So anyway, I'm just going to so I have my phone here, so I'm not just checking the news or Facebook or anything like that. That's interesting that someone's just posted, but anyway. So if you want to submit a question, let me know as well. It'd be great for you to contribute to the conversation if you'd like to. But I'll introduce Clayton. Clayton is the Chief Executive Officer at Positive Media, and he hosts the popular Towards Understanding radio show, broadcast on 89.9 The Light in Melbourne, and on 19 radio stations across Australia and New Zealand. He's been working in radio for over 20 years and is reputed to have interviewed over 1,700 people. And it's an absolute pleasure to welcome Clayton Bjelan to Northcote Baptist Church this morning. So please make him feel welcome.
Thank you very much.
So Clayton, welcome. Thanks for joining us this morning on this, we work with the light, but it's not particularly well. It's the sun now. It's not so much light today. But now I must admit, I feel a little bit of pressure making a good interview here, because you've spent years interviewing people, interviewed over 1,700 people you've interviewed. That's a lot of people. Do you keep count?
We got to a point where a few years ago we actually we've sort of lost count. So we just sort of know by hundreds now. We've got a record of what we think is the majority of them.
Right.
But yeah, we've started losing a bit of count in that regards, but that's okay. Right?
Sure. Okay. It's a lot.
Yeah.
You need to take your shoes off to count all the people. That's right. Yeah. Now you've interviewed all sorts of people. Is there one guest that you've interviewed that impresses people that you meet at parties? You know, the most famous person perhaps that you've interviewed. Who's the person, the name that you enjoy dropping the most? Perhaps?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've interviewed a whole lot of people, and there's always people ask different questions like that. There's always sort of different criteria of like who's the most famous, or what was the interview you loved the best, all those sorts of things. And so I've interviewed former prime ministers, interviewed F1 stars, drivers. I've interviewed musicians. I've interviewed singers. I've interviewed all sorts. The one that's probably technically the most famous worldwide is the heavyweight boxer George Foreman, because I reckon probably around the world that's the most people who have met him. And it was actually a fascinating way that I got in touch with him. It was during the Commonwealth Games many years ago here in Melbourne, and I knew that he was out doing commentary on the TV. And I went, how do I get in touch with this guy? He's a Christian guy. I'd love to chat to him. And I realised, how do I do this? And this is what I always tell new producers, just think creatively. So I thought to myself, well, they sell those George Foreman grills, right? So I rang up a local Kmart and I said, you sell these grills? They said, yeah. Who distributes those for you? And then they gave me the distributor's number, and I rang the distributor and I said that, I think they might have put me onto the larger distributor. I said, do you happen to have the manager's number? I said, actually, we do. And so they passed it on, and that afternoon I had George Foreman on the program, and that was quite an incredible one. Can I tell you a quick story on him?
Yeah, sure. Does he prefer talking about his grills or his boxing?
No, definitely his boxing and his faith. He is a pastor actually too, and so but George has 10 kids or something, and all of the boys, there's 7 boys, are all called George. George 1, George 2, George like this, and all the girls are Georgina. And I said to him, I'm thinking a bit full of yourself, And I said, well, why do you call them all this? He says, you get hit in the head this many times and try and remember any other name. So fair enough too.
Well, that's a good point. I suppose he's just got to remember the numbers. I suppose he's got to learn how to count to 10.
That's right.
So he doesn't need to take his shoes off.
Exactly.
That's right. Okay, most interesting. What about the most boring interview that you've ever done?
There's actually been, I won't say names, but there has been a number that we don't actually air. So because I do a program on a Sunday night and it's shared around the country, we do actually do it just a little bit in advance, because we're trying to get people from all over the world at various times. So sometimes I'm interviewing them at late at night or early in the morning, during the week, whatever it might be, to get the best interviews. But there have been some where we've just interviewed them and we've got to the end of the interview and I've done it and I've just gone, we're not airing that. We just can't. And either they're highly sacrilegious, or they're very boring, or they're just they couldn't actually share their message well.
Right.
And it's very rare. It's probably only been about 3 or 4 across the whole years, but that's what's happened.
Okay, yeah, you're not going to drop. You don't drop those names
No, I won't be saying those
at
names.
parties when you say, "Yeah, I met that person." Oh,
That's
yeah.
right.
No,
No,
you might have not have heard that
that's
interview.
right,
That's
that's
right. Yeah, okay. Actually, and you did interview me once, but actually my interview didn't.
Yours meant to air, so that was fine.
That was a release. I'm in the bottom
you're
couple.
in the
That's right.
bottom.
That's scrape the barrel in the bottom. Okay. Well, it's great that you can join us here
you.
today, Clayton. And we're talking here today about light. And so I thought I'd kick off our conversation with a little bit of fun. And so I thought I'd ask you a couple of quick questions just to kind of get us thinking about light. Now, do you feel qualified?
Probably not. I didn't do very well at physics or anything like that, but we'll give it a go.
Okay, well, you might need to do well at physics in order to... Okay, there's 2 questions, both multiple choice. Okay, the first question is profound and it's difficult. What is light? Is it A, waves? Is it B, particles? Is it C, Jesus? Or is it D, a radio station?
Can I say like the E, all of the above one? Is that the idea? Like
Yes,
something
you could.
good,
That's
good.
right, and that would be right.
That's right.
Yes, it is, yeah. Maybe that was a bit too easy perhaps, but it is a fascinating thing though. Light is a fascinating quality though, because it can be a number of things at the same time. I mean, it's a very rich and interesting metaphor for life as well. But anyway, maybe we'll come to that a bit later. But okay, so you're doing pretty well so far. That's a pretty good start. Okay, question 2. How far away is the most distant light to the naked eye in the night sky? This is not in Melbourne. It's just to make clear, if you're out in the night sky, in the dark light. Okay, is it A, the street lights across the road? Is it B, a star system 6 light years away? Is it C, a star 16,000 light years away? Or is it D, a galaxy 2.5 million light years away? The most distant light to the naked eye.
Wouldn't have a clue. Let's go the 16,000 one.
You're close, but actually not even close at all. You're out by a factor of about 2.5 million.
Geez.
So the answer was actually D.
Isn't that incredible?
The most distant light visible with the naked eye is the galaxy Andromeda, a galaxy 2.5 million light years away. So anyway, Clayton, well, maybe a bit of extra study on physics might help. But anyway, but you still, on our light quiz, you passed. You got one of our 2 questions right, even though you couldn't get the one about the light years one. But anyway, big round of applause for Clayton anyway, for giving it a go and for passing. Although it did help that you couldn't get one of them questions wrong.
This is true.
That's right.
That's the best way to do these quizzes.
We like to be positive.
If it was only like this at school when I went through, that would be great.
Maybe it should have been. So Clayton, but does it blow your mind though, just to think that light from something so far away can still be seen here on Earth, trillions of kilometres away?
It does, and I think, I mean, this is part of the majesty of God, right, of what he's done, but I think it is a mind-blowing concept, for sure.
But do you think it says something about the power and effect of light, that it can be seen so far away?
I think it does. I mean, obviously, you know, we work at the radio station called The Light, and so I think about it a bit, but I think the fascinating part of light for me is this idea of illumination, that actually you can have total darkness and add just the tiniest bit of light, and it's not. There's some hope. There's some perspective. There's something to aim at. There's something to move towards. There is something that we can now see so much more. And so you can have a whole lot of darkness, as it were, but you only need one little bit of light, and it can change all of that. And I know that's not quite perfectly how darkness and light works, but you get what I mean.
That's
like this idea, this concept that actually just a little bit of something that is good, a little bit of the light can change.
I suppose that's the way that you destroy darkness, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like if you have even a tiny bit of, even if it's not very much, you no longer have darkness
Correct.
because you have a little bit of light there. And I suppose that's part of the idea, the vision of 89.9 the light. I mean, because you're called 89.9 the light.
Yep.
It's not because you have 89 lights in the office.
No, that's right. We're always turning them on. No, it's not that reason. And I mean, you know, obviously the 89 is just part of the signal and where it was that was given, but the heart and the mission of the place is actually a phrase that we call every life a light with the love of Jesus. And so our heart is to actually show that and shine that. And you know, you see it's got positive media on the screen. That's just what the organisation is called, but it runs the radio stations called The Light. And so our desire and our hope is to do just that. And we often talk about this idea that positivity for us or things like that is not sort of looking like it rose-coloured glasses the whole time and that everything's fine, but actually facing the world, actually saying, look, these things are happening in our world, and how can we look at this? What could Jesus actually show us about this? How can we look at this a different way? And that's what we mean by hope and positivity and shining the light, that this idea is not to just pretend nothing bad ever happens, but to actually have this moment of facing what it is and looking at it.
So it's positivity and hope amidst darkness or difficulty. And not saying, well, just be happy, smile and be happy, ignore the difficult things of life, the challenges, the sadness, the things. It's actually then to say, actually, even amidst that, there still is hope and meaning.
Yeah, because I think that's when we become relevant, right? The organisation has the privilege of, here in Melbourne, almost 800,000 people every month listen in. And about 350,000 of those people would never, ever go into a church. They have no Christian faith. They even follow another religion, potentially. And we have that opportunity, right? Like to be relevant in those spaces and places. But we have to be relevant to be able to share the message too. It's no point trying to make somebody come somewhere they can't yet. You have to be where they are and let them see that.
Do you want to unpack that a bit more? When you say be relevant, like that can mean lots of different things to different people. What does it mean then? How do you understand that to be relevant in order to connect with people?
Yeah, so for us it's a few different ways, right? It's this idea of, on the radio, we talk about this concept of how do we actually engage, right? So it could be that we have to talk about the weather, or we're having fun.
Pretty common, easy thing to talk about.
In Melbourne especially, or what's in the news, or whatever else it might be, or something that we're going through in our own lives that is not perfect, right? We're struggling with this in our marriage or with our kids or whatever it might be. And all of these things are things that we can relate to and we can understand, we can go through. And then in that to actually share that there is a hope, right? That we are going through this. Because we're Christians doesn't mean we're not suddenly in the world, right? But how do we actually understand that there is great purpose beyond maybe the struggle that we see right now? So I think for me, it's part of that. It's playing great music. You know, from our perspective on the station, we play a mix of Christian and mainstream music that is actually lyrically checked and appropriate. So, and the idea is that if anybody comes across the station, they go, oh, that's a familiar song, and they'll stick around, and so that's why we do that.
So yeah, unpack that. So that's a controversial choice in some sense in Christian radio to be playing non-Christian or Christian music that's not explicitly Christian.
Yes.
Unpack what's the rationale for that?
Yeah. So we have this theory and this idea that literally we don't want anybody to ever be one song away from a song that they're familiar with. So maybe you've listened to it or heard it on another station, on Spotify or wherever it is, and that when you flick along, the very next song, even if you're listening to this song, it might be a Christian song, it might be a brand new sort of song, the next song will be one you will know. It's the theory anyway, that's been around. And our idea of that is to just have people sort of keep connecting and keep connecting and keep connecting. And not, in many ways, sort of go, oh, it's normal, and then start going, oh, actually, there's something different about it. And that's the idea of that. In fact, I've got a story. I talked to Robert. I said, I'm going to bring some stories. Hope that's all right. Can I share one story on that? Which is sort of highlights what this is about and our idea and concept. This came just in the last month and a little bit. And it came from a man. He wrote this. He said, hi, I'm not your typical listener, being gay and atheist. But I enjoy listening to your show, especially Shaylee and Rob, which is our drive show. 3 months ago, my husband Darren passed away suddenly, aged just 34. In the midst of my grief, I found your radio station. I didn't think this was a Christian station at first because I heard mainstream pop rock music. And I find the drive show to be uplifting and positive. The station's messages of positivity transcends religion and is relevant to us all. Was sort of ironic, I think, from an atheist said, thank God that your drive show are not Kyle and Jackie O. They're not trying to humiliate people or gossip about the private lives of famous people. Thank you for your positivity. And for us, that's the heart of it, right, is to actually, we are very much there for people of faith, many of us who are here today, to encourage us, right, as we go through our week when we're not sitting in a church and to encourage us. But it's also there for those to actually connect in. So the reason we do the music the way we do is exactly for a story like that. For somebody who, if they flick through and went, there's music I just don't know, I don't know any of this, they're gone again. But if there's some sort of music that is, clean and appropriate, but it's mainstream, and they go, oh, I know that song, and they might stick around and have the opportunity to influence.
So the rationale is that you're trying to find a point of connection, connect with people, but then to show something of difference and some positivity and the light of Jesus, ultimately.
100%. So the absolute bottom line of what we've got to do is, in the end, there's no point just sharing another song that's clean. The absolute bottom line is we have to share Jesus, right? Because Jesus is actually, as much as it sounds sometimes like a bit of a basic Sunday school answer, is actually the answer, right? But he comes and speaks to us in our own individual personal ways. We connect in different ways. And so we want to share Jesus that, hey, it's not just a community even, it's not just a group of people, but that community, that group of people, that radio station can shine out the true light. And he is the one that you need to come near.
Because in the Bible, it does talk, as you've just talked about, in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus talks about those who follow him. So obviously follow Jesus is in Matthew 5:14-16, you are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. So this is one of the reasons, I suppose, that you're called the light, and not like good tunes or nice music or have a good time kind of music or smooth FM or something like. Or sorry, not that I'm trying to, or gold.
Oh, that's right.
Gold FM or anything. But that's one of the reasons you're called the light, though, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. So when it was actually decided, we've had our license for about 21 years now. So actually, the last capital city in Australia to have a Christian radio station was Melbourne. And so we're quite new in that sense. It's just been 21 years in that regards. And that was exactly the reason that it was actually designed to say, hey, what is it? Well, we want to shine. It was technically called Light FM there. We've changed it to the light, like Jesus is the light. But exactly, that's the whole point. That's the idea.
So why do you think that Jesus uses the image of light to describe Christian believers?
I think it's a little bit back to what I was referring to with the darkness concept, right? That there is something about light that we are drawn to. The old moths to a flame concept, right? Is that there's something there, we come to it. And if we are in a dark space, we're walking down a dark street and there is one street light, there's going to be much more chance that people are going to congregate around there. And I think this is that idea as well, that there is something that is more pure in that. We go back to that dark street concept, right? Like, bad stuff might happen in the dark, but it's a whole lot harder for bad stuff to happen in the light, right? There is something that light illuminates something. It highlights, it shows what is really occurring. And so that's the awesome thing about Jesus, right? And what we are called to be as well, that we are called to shine him. And as he shines into us and who we are, he illuminates parts of us that we might need to work on, and we might need to bring to him afresh, those sorts of ideas. But it is much better to be in that space and to be working with it. And I think the reason he's calling us to be that is that, we have this crazy, I still don't understand at all how this works, but, we are made in his image. We are his representatives into the world, right? He's chosen us. It's mind-blowing to me that that's what he's chosen to do. But here we are to be that sort of reflection, that idea. I think that's an awesome opportunity.
Yeah. Also, the light, 89.9 The Light is described as Melbourne's positive alternative.
Yep.
So do you see positivity being connected to light in some ways as well?
Yeah, I think I do. I think
with qualifications, though, perhaps.
Yeah, that's right. I think in radio terms, there's a couple of things you do. You have your name, and then you have really essentially like your promise. And all the stations do it, right? Triple M is rock, sport, whatever they do now. Comedy, I think it is. The other stations are the hits or whatever.
Gold FM.
Gold FM, yeah, the songs you love or whatever they are. And often it's around the music, but we've chosen this specific one around, about being a positive, this idea of positive and uplifting, this concept that this is positive radio. And it is really sort of this counterbalance to so much of what our media is, to actually have this positivity. And so for us, it's a little bit about that as well, without getting into too much, but we talk about the Kyle and Jackie O show, which, I'm not sure how much you're aware of it, but there's a radio station here in Melbourne who's started taking this show from Sydney. And literally in their first show, there was a summary of their first show written up, and it went for nine sentences, and I could not possibly read to you now any of the topics that they talked about. In fact, in those 9 sentences, I worked out if I had to read it out to you what it was, I would have had to redact 16 separate topics. And I'm talking, I can't even hint to what they are. They are vile, they're filthy topics. But there is something about this that is engaging, right? There's something about this that people are being drawn into.
Well, Kyle Bjelan's, he's worth a lot of money.
Well, of course
they pay a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely. He's getting $2 million a year to do this, right? So there's something that is being drawn to, but I think it's because we're on a search for something as humans, right? We're trying to search for something. We're trying to connect in. We're trying to understand. We're trying to, what is this? Is the celebrity culture? Is this crazy, talking about these crazy things worth it? Well, actually, that's why it has to be positive, right? Positivity is this sort of countercultural thing in our environment at the moment. And so as we have positivity, people come into that and go, oh, actually, there is something about this. There is something about what this is. Let me start exploring what it is. And I think we find so often that people will discover what the station is about and then go, there's something different. There's something going on. Let me stick around here. And I think that's the difference, right? That's what we mean by positive. Let's be realistic, but bring you into something that is hope-filled.
And that, I suppose the light, and that's what the light is.
Yeah.
It's illuminating, and ultimately you've found that the heart is in Jesus.
Yeah. Correct.
You shared with me some other stories. Share another story about the impact of the station. There's a couple other...
Yeah, that's great.
Maybe share another story about how that positivity has shaped and changed people's lives.
Well, and I think sort of made people stick around. This is one from earlier this year, a lady by the name of Bianca. And it's a little bit similar to this idea of around somebody who doesn't really have an understanding of Jesus at the start. This is her words. She said this: I've been a devout atheist my whole life, up until a few weeks ago. Your radio station hasn't left my radio. I have somehow, through everyone's inspiring stories and you guys, I go to church. I pray. I'm a lot happier. I haven't had a drink in 3 weeks. Actually, I can't believe how inspiring this radio station is. It's just amazing. So I wanted to say thank you guys. Just leading me to a brighter path. I wake up happy. I go to sleep with the station. I wake up to the radio station. I'm a lot more happier. I'm more friendly. I've even volunteered in my local church. I don't know what you've done, but it's great. I've got a 4-year-old and a 13-year-old, and I just want to see the right example of positive vibes, and they're just happy to have a happier mum. And I mean, these are not stories of every listener, right? I'm not trying to pretend that every single story is this massive, dramatic one, but I think it sort of highlights the opportunity that as we go along and have this chance of a radio, and the station, the license, just to be able to pay to have the license air, it's worth $60 million, and we got given it for free, right? We got given it for free to broadcast, as long as we are helping people. That's the condition that comes with it. As long as we're talking about faith, Christian faith, and as long as we're helping others who are interested in spirituality. And this is a crazy thing, right? The government actually has given us this license to impact this community of people across their city. And so this is the idea and the opportunity. And I think for me, that even though that's not every single story, it gets into where people are. It gets into cars. The amount of stories I could tell you of people who have said, I was driving along, there was no one else. In fact, I was actually trying not to be with anyone else. And the radio spoke. God spoke to me through the radio in that moment. And I think that's the crazy privilege that we have of having this in this city. It's actually the most listened to, even though it's the most recent of the stations in the country, it's the most listened to community radio station, Christian or any other radio station, in the whole country, is right here. And I think that's what we just love.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for inspiring us there, Clayton. You've talked about the radio station. Yep. It's great to hear the great work of 89.9 The Lights. The vision of our church is to be light into the north of Melbourne. So what lessons do you think you've learned through your experience through radio that can help us in our daily lives, wherever we are, in the retirement village, in the school, in the university, at work, or wherever we might be the light of Jesus, bringing positivity and hope to people that we're connected with?
Yeah.
What lessons do you think you could bring to help us?
Yeah, well, I think there's probably a verse and a story that I might actually share from the radio. So even though it's radio-based, it's designed to help us from here. And I think the verse is one that we've talked about a lot at the radio, and it's Philippians 2. And I had to write down, because every time I try and say it, I always just jumble it back to front. But it's so much better when you actually get it right. Who would have thought? So Philippians 2, this is actually from the Message sort of translation. It says this: "Go out into the world uncorrupted, a breath of fresh air in this squalid and polluted society. Provide people with a glimpse of good living and of the living God. Carry the light-giving message into the night." And I think it's just so, that could be for a group, could be a radio station, but how much is that for us, right? That our job is sort of to be these witnesses. You know, we read in the Bible constantly that our job's not necessarily actually to go and preach and convert everybody there. It's our job is to go and be a witness. Just be a witness to what we've seen, what we're about, what we know, right? Just walk in to the world. Carry that light-giving message by the fact that we are who we are, as we are with Jesus, and just be open and ready to shine that example of him. And one of my favorite stories actually to sort of highlight this is from the show. And people ask me, it's a bit like you asked at the start, but if they ever ask me the question, what's your favorite interview? And I sort of rattle off, I met this person and that person and this one and all these ones. But I always come back to the same story. And it's a guy by the name of Ben Ferguson. He was 14 years old when I interviewed him, at least for the first time. And you wouldn't normally necessarily interview, say, a 14-year-old's my favourite interview ever after all these incredible people. But there's just something about this opportunity and this kid. He was at, a couple of years before that, so when he was 12 years old, at a big Youth Alive event in the city. And Reggie Dabbs was speaking there, if anyone knows Reggie. He's a highly dynamic speaker. And as he was talking about it, he got to the end and he said, hey, kids, you can have an impact in this world by, imagine sponsoring kids overseas, and talked about the sponsorship programs and providing food and opportunities for kids overseas. And so Ben was so excited as this 12-year-old, and he came home and he added up all his money that he had. He worked out all the money he could get for his birthday and Christmas that everyone would give him if he just said, could you give it to me? He worked it all out. He worked out he could sponsor one kid for 4 months, and then all his money would dry up. And that was it. Now, most kids, I don't know about you, frankly, I would at 12 gone, oh, well, that was a good idea. Time to move on to something else. He did something different. That night, he started creating pamphlets. And he made heaps of pamphlets. And the next morning, he started putting these pamphlets in all of the letterboxes of the street. And what it was is, this was, I will walk your dog for you. This is what these pamphlets were. And sure enough, he started getting heaps of people. To the fact that 2 years later, when I was interviewing him, he was walking, I think it was like 40 dogs a week or something, and he was employing other kids to walk the dogs because he couldn't physically do it all. And within 2 years, he was sponsoring 4 kids every month. He dug 3 wells in Africa, something like that. He helped start a school, and he was 14. And the incredible moment of that, he actually went on, I brought him on a couple other times a few years later as well. He organised a big thing around his school where they walked around an oval for 24 hours and raised $60,000 and all sorts of things. He has this incredible heart. But in that first interview when he's 14, I said to him, hey, mate, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do? And he said, well, I'd like to still do the dog walking. He's like, but what I'd really like to do is share Jesus with people around this world. I'd like to go and share Jesus. I had a moment where you're sort of not supposed to do it as an interviewer, where you sort of, you're always supposed to be an interviewer, but I sort of just went into a bit of almost dad mode for a second. And I just stopped and I said to him, mate, you are sharing Jesus. You're 14. I'm an adult. I can go around the world and share Jesus. I can do these things. I can do these other things. You are sharing Jesus right now. He almost was looking at it like, well, in the future is when I can share Jesus. but he was where it is. And I think that's the encouragement that I would say from about being the light, right? Here in Northcote, in this area, is actually how can you do it? You are here. You are the ones that are here. You have been blessed by God to be in this place. You have been called by God to be in this place. In fact, I can't do it in the same way. I live in Belgrave, right? That's where I have to be in that space. But you can walk this street. You can go there. You can share Jesus in this place. And I think so often we look to share somewhere else. And Dallas Willard has this great quote which talks about this idea of, God has never blessed somebody where they aren't. That we so often think it's something else that we're supposed to do, something else we're supposed to be. But what if it's right here? And I think so often that's really freeing too. I've been looped up in my Christian life for so long. Like, what's the thing I'm supposed to do, God? Actually, what about the thing right in front of you, man? What about the thing, just the next right thing? As John Mark Comer talks about, just the next right thing. And I think that's the encouragement, right?
Yeah.
Share the light by just being you and being here and being ready to provide a glimpse of good living and of the living God when you need to. Sorry, I got real preachy mode.
That's okay. We actually have a question that's come through. Hopefully you can deal with it quickly.
Yeah.
Where do shadows go when the light is on?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I think it's a good question.
I think that goes to the Kyle and Jackie O show.
We are recording this, but that's okay. I don't think Kyle watches the broadcasts of Northcote Baptist very much, but maybe he should. It's been terrific you've been able to join with us and share today. I've got some more questions here, but we've run out of time, and it'd be great to be able to reflect more about how Jesus is the light of the world. But maybe as we close up, how is Jesus light of the world for you?
Yeah, I've been on a real journey the last year or two around. I've been brought up in the church, in a Baptist church as well, actually, and have really that sort of evangelical concept of getting out and sharing and doing it is sort of what it is. But I've been on a real journey these last year or two around the contemplative life with Jesus, and this idea of how do I spend time with him? How do I enjoy that time with him? How do I allow that concept of not necessarily having to achieve something next, but being with him? There's moments where he'll call me to step out and achieve, and there's moments where he's just going to call me to be. And ultimately, all of that is filling my tank of lightness, if we want it, up more. That sometimes, as I do that, I can then be the best example. You can sort of achieve more with less, as I understand what that is. And so I've been on it feels like for me a bit of, I've been in the church my whole life. I've been, gave my life to Jesus when I was 4 years old. But there's these new ideas of what light does. You sort of hold a prism and you put light through it, and you kind of just turn a little bit here and there, and man, there's some more there, and there's some more of that, and that's what I'm discovering with Jesus right now, as I'm spending that time in new ways, in different ways, and I'm trying. I've never been very good at it, to take some time just in solitude, and put nothing, just me and him, and it drives me a bit bonkers at times, but also some incredible beauties come out of that has occurred, and so
and it drives the shadows away.
Yeah, it drives the shadows away. It does. It really does, because it brings up the pain that you need to deal with, but then there's an opportunity to step into it. Fantastic. So I think that's it.
Let's close with the words from Matthew 5:14-16. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Please thank our guest today, Clayton Bjelan.
Thank you, everyone.
And let's pray. Father, we thank you that there is light and then hope in the message of Jesus, that despite the challenges, sufferings and difficulties of life, there is hope, strength and comfort in Jesus and his love. We thank you for Clayton and 89.9 The Light, that they are working to bring the light and hope of Jesus to our city and the world. May we be refreshed and equipped to be the light to people around us, and may you bless the vision of our church to be the light to the north of Melbourne. In Jesus' name, the light of the world. Amen.